The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. Great to be with you on a Friday. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark, and you. Numbers to get in, 489-1240, 489-1240, or where you hear us across the Hail Varsity Radio Network, 1-800-825-5865. Can email the show, chris@hailvarsity.com. Can watch the show and contribute on the stream. We'll get to your comments as much and as many as we can. Hail Varsity YouTube, subscribe to that, like it, tell a buddy, and, of course, the podcast on your terms and time, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Also follow the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio. Can find Elijah on Twitter at Herbal Essence. Can find Connor Clark on Twitter at C_Clark_27, at Schmidt_radio for me. We've got a trifecta to hit today. Husker Basketball back in action after a week of rest. How much rust will need to be knocked off? Husker Baseball off to a 1-0 start as they down Baylor 4-1 down in Arlington. Some thoughts on Nebraska football as we gear up. I think I saw 80 days till spring football gets rocking. So there is that interesting question in Mitch Sherman's mailbag with The Athletic. How ready is ready for Dylan Raiola? Is he ready to be QB1? We also toyed with some of those coin flip games, 4 of them that Brandon Vogel had circled with the first power rankings that came out. So we can tackle all of it. We're pretty loaded up as well.
Extremely loaded up.
Yeah, so excited to talk with Jacob Padilla. Jacob will talk hoops with us. Some Nebraska and Creighton, some high school seed setting for the weekend as we're into district play shortly for girls and boys action as state is around the corner. Joba Chamberlain will join us, the Triple Play podcast, man. Joba, Yankee, and Husker great. He'll be with us at 4:40. Get his impressions, his take on what he saw today with Nebraska's win over Baylor. The Pride of Fairbury, Bill Doleman, with us coming up at 5 o'clock. And then Connor Onion's going to be with us at 5:25. BTN, he has the call tomorrow at PBA. Are you red beer? Are you orange beer? Are you Bloody Mary for 11 a.m. kickoffs and tip-offs? Because I know the rail yard will be maybe pouring a little Irish coffee.
See, I was going to say Irish coffee.
You're going Irish coffee.
But other than that, if it's not an Irish coffee, if I'm working and I got to keep it in check, then I'll go with the orange beer.
Okay.
But if I'm allowed to drink,
I'll go with the red.
We've done this usually on our Saturday morning shows when we're all craving one.
Yeah.
And some of us may be having one.
See, the preferred way to go, and I've done this on enough Premier League mornings at home on either a Saturday or a Sunday, is to go Irish coffees, because if you
go oatmeal and Guinness, don't you?
Well, no. You go the Irish coffee, and you keep it simple, where you can do like the cream, like to go get yourself some heavy whipping cream and turn it into a whip and put it on top, or you just go simple and just go Jack Daniels and black coffee.
Wow. Yeah.
I thought you went. I thought it was Bailey's and coffee.
Most people
That's
do,
what I
but
thought
they're
too.
not having fun.
But I'm Elijah, and I have hair on my chest.
You go Jack Daniels and black coffee, because the coffee
That's an
gets you up.
American
The
man
Jack,
right there.
The coffee gets you up. The Jack Daniels gets you down. So you just maintain like right down the middle the whole way. You get the portions right.
He lives in the woods and he wears plaid. He may or may not have an axe or several. If he's going with Jack and coffee in the morning. Let's get roll call.
That's what I do before our Saturday morning show most of the time.
Elijah, why do you look like hell? Don't talk to me. Let's get roll call, our starting 5. We always shout out our first 5 in the stream as NU Grandpa got in at 340. Jeff edged out by a nose. Jeff in at number 2. Mike checks in at 3. Mr. Snitley, Jeff Snitley in at 4. Black Hills Brennan in at 5. And Eat Beef checks in, says TGIF. artist formerly known as KG Kids for Life. Am I late? From first to last, what a fall from grace. Tuck wants us to talk about urinal design today. And, we got off on the Little Red tangent yesterday to get things rolling. I just think no matter what happens with South Stadium, all the reconstruction and redesign and the beauty that will be a facelift to a 100-year-old stadium, you got to leave the troughs.
And it's not because
that's just my
love
statement for America.
Much. I love not standing in line, and the troughs really eliminate standing in line. My one thing
efficiency.
Is I want less reflectivity off the troughs, not in a visual sense, but in like a splatter sense. Right. Is give me some ergonomics to it so it doesn't splatter back on me. But if you can cover that, I'm perfectly fine with the troughs.
My trough horror story.
There are so many titles for today's episode in the last 2.5 minutes.
Let me just preface it was when Junior was, 4 or 5, and he went to his first spring game, and he had to go. So we weave our way down from wherever we were sitting, and there's the troughs, and I just kind of airlifted him, and he stood on the edge of the trough where he was facing the trough and did his thing, right? Yeah, he didn't. There wasn't any friendly fire.
That's one way to put it.
On the other patrons. But Junior did his thing and lifted him up. He had his little feet on, or his feet on the edge of the trough and did his thing. Then airlifted him down and away we went. Airlifted him up to wash his hands, and away we went.
You know, it'd be funny to recreate that now with 17-year-old Junior.
Junior's taller than I am now.
That's what would make it funny.
He's going to be lifting me up.
Just imagine walking into a Memorial Stadium bathroom and there's a dude and his 17-year-old taller son perched up on the edge of the trough.
He would absolutely he'd start swinging on me. That's it. Time to take the title.
That'd make it even funnier.
Oh no!
Junior with his pants around his ankles, swinging on you into the bathroom. Not like that.
Oh, see.
So we've gone from Jack and coffee to friendly fire to. And I quote, swinging on you.
And Tuck, thank you for leading us down this yellow brick road.
I'd like to know I did not mean it in a helicopter kind of way.
No, right, yeah, right.
You should just be quiet.
Connor's invoking timeouts 13 minutes into the show. Highbrow today, I know, and you, Grandpa. Andrew checks in. Scott asks, what's up, guys? We are going to just delete this show from all podcast memory.
Yeah, if you're also 8 minutes into the podcast, stick with us here. We promise we have actual sports talk.
We do, and that's where we're going. So let's start with baseball because a lot of anticipation for Nebraska, and what a job Nebraska did, right? They used 4 different pitchers. They allowed just 1 run, no walks, 9 strikeouts, and this is what you want to see, right? This is why Rob Childress is where he's at, and that's not anything defamatory or denigrating Coach Christie. Love Coach Christie. I'm just saying, you saw what today? When we talked the job about Nebraska pitching, what is Rob Childress, what is his edict? It is to go compete, whether you're having your best day or you're not feeling 1,000%. But Nebraska's pitching, the strength today, and Nebraska's offense, very, very timely. 4 runs, 5 hits, 1 error committed for Nebraska baseball. Baylor, 1 run, 7 hits. But Dylan Carey was just tremendous, 2 for 4 with 2 doubles and 2 RBIs. Both of those RBIs were 2 outs. You have Brambaugh, also 2 for 4 with an RBI. Garrett Ingram, how about him coming into the 9th and just getting enough of that yellow line to left field with the solo home run. Nebraska also got a bunt over to add a second 9th inning run in the top of the 9th for the insurance. 4-1 it is, but Sears pitched well, got the no decision, 5 1/3, 1 run, 3 hits, 7 strikeouts. Timmerman came in, got the win, went 1 2/3 scoreless. Kyle Perry, goose eggs in the 8th. And then the Dice man, Casey Dice, a 1-2-3 9th. So no walks, 9 strikeouts, 3 2-out hits, 3 of the 4 runs scored with 2 outs.
That's you mentioned one stat you kind of glazed over. It's the number one stat I look at from today from this pitching staff: 0 free passes, no bases on balls, no hit by pitch. You made Baylor earn it. And that's what led to so much of this success. And you can look at Sears with the 7 strikeouts. That was awesome. Perry got himself one, which was good to see. Dice got himself one, and he looked nails in the 9th inning. But the stat that just jumps off the page to me is the Husker pitching staff did not give up a free pass today. And that is the ticket to winning baseball. It's one of the biggest problems this pitching staff had last year was free passes, giving teams life. Oh, you're up by 1 in the 7th on a Tuesday night game, and here's back-to-back free passes, and now they got a runner in scoring position with nobody out in the 7th. And then you look up, and 3 batters later, you find yourselves down by 2 runs. Like, this is the story of the Husker baseball team last year, and it's a huge step in the right direction that they didn't give up any free passes. The timely hitting was nice. You get an insurance run in the 9th on the solo home run. But at the end of the day, this was a great pitching performance from Husker baseball. They got enough run support, which was complimentary. And, from the batting perspective, I think the biggest thing you can say is on a day when Baylor had pitch counts in place, and most teams in the country have pitch counts in place, they worked deep into counts. They really ate up a lot of pitches. They got themselves into the Baylor bullpen, and they were able to do some work on the Baylor bullpen. I mean, who was the starter? Marriott for Baylor. He had a fantastic performance too, but as soon as you chased him from that game, you looked really, really good against the Baylor relievers, which was just sticking to it, competing, not getting down on yourself, and it obviously helps whenever your pitching staff has a day like that, not giving up any free passes, and really, I don't want to call it flawless pitching performances,
you're going to take it and run to start the year.
For what you can get in game 1 of the year, that was as good as you can get.
Yeah, it was tough sledding for offense early for both sides, really. But for Nebraska, I mean, they were getting no hit for, I believe, 5 1/3. Correct me if I'm wrong. I was able to watch the game.
First hit came in the 6th.
Yeah, I was able to watch the game on and off throughout the day. But you strike out 14 times, you get no hit for at least 5 innings, and then you battle and you're able to get it done. And you mentioned Dylan Carey with two out RBIs. I saw the second one, and it hung up there forever out in left field, and everybody in red and white's like, drop, 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 and then it finally does. So they cash in on that opportunity, and then they get later insurance runs. Great to see the bullpen do well. Great to see a guy like Kyle Perry, who's a 6th year, go have a pretty easy time in his 1 inning. Obviously, Brett Sears was great, 7 strikeouts to no walks, as Elijah mentioned. That's what sticks out for this pitching staff. He only gave up 3 hits in the 1 earned run. You'll take that any day of the week. So tough sledding early offensively, but they were able to stay patient, figure it out, as Elijah said, work deep into those pitch counts and those at-bats, and they battled and got it done. And again, piggybacking off of what Elijah had to say, maybe you don't see that very often last year, but this is I know it's 1 game.
Didn't see it enough.
Yeah, they play a lot of games. This is a promising start.
Well, and our dear friend Mitch Sherman with The Athletic put out this tweet, first time in what? Since 2020?
First time, second time in program history, and the first time since 2020 that Nebraska has faced a Power 5 team in their opening game of the season and won. Obviously, you go back to 2020, and the next month was not great. You go
then
to
get it canceled.
You go on to lose 6 straight, and then the season gets canceled. So you're hoping for better this year. But even despite that you beat Baylor 4 years ago, to be the only time you beat a Power 5 team in your opening game of the year, this performance was a little bit different. I mean, I look at Sears, 20 batters, only 72 pitches. That's a pretty astounding start to the season. I mean, I think you're averaging just under 4 pitches per at-bat, which is really, really good. You're pitching to contact. You were throwing first pitch strikes. The bullpen comes in and looks really good. This is just an encouraging performance of the Husker baseball team. I don't think this is the Baylor squads of old that you sometimes think about. They had a really down year last year. It's kind of the second year of their rebuild. They're on the upward trajectory, but probably the easiest of the 3 teams that you're going to be facing this weekend. It's good to go out and get a win. Let's see what they can do the rest of the weekend, though.
We'll get some thoughts on the outing today and the look ahead. Texas Tech tomorrow, Oklahoma Sunday, Joba Chamberlain in 20 minutes. And you can watch that. You can hear it, obviously, but you can watch it. The Hail Varsity YouTube. He'll be joining us in the stream, as well as Jacob Padilla here in about 5 minutes. Basketball, as Nebraska gets back at it They are still in a lot of projections on the right side of the bubble. You look at the Jay Billis Index, and I was looking at his ranking. He ranks 1 through 68. Does this about every week or every other week, and he starts things off with a fair question about what do you make of Kansas, right? Because Kansas can look great. You look at their wins, and then you look at them just get absolutely destroyed, probably by a 3 to a 5 seed, maybe a 6 seed in Texas Tech. We'll see how the season finishes out for the Red Raiders. But the point is, you can look good and terrible. You know it well if you're a Nebraska basketball fan, because you look really, really good most of the time, if not all the time at PBA. But you don't look that way on the road, or at least you've not had closing. You've not had winning time be a reality on the road.
To play devil's advocate for Kansas just in this particular situation, I think that also speaks volumes to how good the Big 12 is. The Big 12 is legit.
Yeah, them and the SEC are going to put Kansas. I should say the Big 12 is supposed to put 10.
They're close. They got 9 right now.
Yeah, 10, 9 for sure, 10 maybe. The SEC's loaded this year too, and that's taken away from your typical, at worst, 7-bid Big Ten season. All right, Jacob Padilla's on the way. Joba Chamberlain, Bill Doleman, all straight ahead of Friday with Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. Friday edition. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. We welcome in with Hail Varsity and Hurrdat Sports, Jacob Padilla at Jacob Padilla _ on Twitter. Can watch this segment also, Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Jacob, good to spend time with you. Thanks for jumping on. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Glad we could work it out this week.
Yeah, well, thanks for your patience and understanding, and it's good to get connected. And we'll start off with some Nebraska basketball. We'll get to Creighton. We'll get to some high school. And, Nebraska right now is still in the thick of it. Fred talked today about meaningful basketball in February and then beyond. If you're looking at the glass half full for Nebraska and their schedule, where do you see Nebraska, I guess, taking that step? What area of their game, what part of the team are you thinking, okay, they can turn a corner and maybe finish strong here February to March? What are you encouraged by at this point in the year by the team?
Well, I don't know if I'd say encourage. I think the opportunity that lies out there is to win on the road. That's, you look at kind of the remaining schedule, and they don't face a top 50 KenPom team. The highest ranked team left on their schedule is Ohio State. And obviously they just fired their coach. So who knows what that game will look like once they get to that point. But they've got 1, 2, 3 chances here to win on the road against teams that I think against teams they've already beat at home. Mm-hmm. So teams that they should be better than. You got to kind of complete that part of the resume to feel good heading into Selection Sunday, to where the selection committee can't look at that as a reason to keep them out. You just want to give them reasons. All right, look at this win over Purdue, win over Wisconsin when they were playing well. Look at this overall win total. All this sort of things. You take away that really outlier did not win a single Big Ten game on the road. I think the resume looks a lot better. So they've shown that they can beat a lot of the teams on their schedule. Any team on their schedule against, they beat Purdue. It's just a matter of, can they find a way to consistently play that way, to translate what they're doing at home to a certain degree on the road to where they can go beat a team they're better than.
It's Jacob Padilla with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Jacob, in a season where the AP top 10 is sub 500 on the road, do you think there's a little bit of grace that's given to Nebraska? We've seen this happen in the NCAA tournament over the course of the past couple of years, where it really feels like there's just a whole bunch more parity in college basketball since the transfer portal really came into the forefront of the NCAA and college athletics. Do you think that in a season like this, the selection committee might look at that differently than if this was, say, 3 or 4 years ago, whenever it was seemingly easier to win on the road?
And that's why I think it's important to get just 1 or 2. Like, again, that's still going to end up with a brutal road record, but it doesn't stand out as much as a big 0 in that column to win 1 road game the entire season. Like, yes, it's really hard to win on the road in college basketball for even the best teams in the country. Just don't be extra bad at it than everybody else. I think is the key. Like I said, don't give them a reason to keep you out. So you get at the end of the season here, all right, you go 3 and whatever on the road. Not great, but they did go out and get a few wins there. If they drop these last 3 on the road against, again, teams that they have already beat at home, that they've shown they're better than, then you start to kind of look side-eye at the resume a little bit more. You finish the entire season with 1 road win. That stands out even beyond everybody else losing on the road. It's you lost on the road more than anybody else in the country almost that's in consideration for the field.
Jacob, briefly here to flip it around, you've seen a lot of college basketball. What is it with Pinnacle Bank Arena this year? Because Purdue fell victim to it. Wisconsin fell victim to it. Even Caitlin Clark, arguably the best women's basketball player we've ever seen, seemed to fall victim to the Pinnacle Bank Arena magic. What is it about Pinnacle Bank Arena that is so difficult to play at based on all the college basketball you've seen? Or is this just a one-off, one-year magic perfect storm?
It's hard to answer because I haven't been there this year really for most of the season. When I was there, they were doing a lot of losing, unfortunately. So,
we found it. We found the answer.
There's the answer.
It's. I mean, we know what the Nebraska fan base can be when. I mean, they're loyal to even when the team isn't having success, but when things are going well, they really get into it. They provide a great home atmosphere. Fans really get after it, heckling opponents. That's certainly part of it. As for the kind of the psychological impact on Nebraska, I'm not really sure what it is, why they do play so much better. It's an outlier how much better they are on the home versus road compared to every other team where there is a big split. We've seen just they're capable of anything, I guess, except for being Creighton at home this season. But on the road, they just can't find a way to carry that magic forward. And I think the fan support, that's certainly part of it. But I don't know what the reason for the complete 180 for their performance is. But I think all of it plays together. Just the team is better for one. If we're talking about the men's side here, the team's better. So the fans are showing up and supporting it even more than they have previously. And then you're having success, so it kind of snowballs and able to get some big wins here. But it's I'm sure it's been a heck of a season for the fans that have been there at PBA week in and week out.
And let it be known, just for the record, whenever Jacob said they've been able to beat everybody at home except for Creighton, he had a slight smirk on his face. Let's just have that on the record.
Well, I mean, it is a true fact, unfortunately. I have a two-parter for you here, Jacob. First of all, does margin of victory matter for Nebraska down the stretch here, first of all? And second of all, more of a broad college basketball question. Today, who is Jacob Padilla's number 1 overall seed in the tournament?
So margin does matter insofar as you want to improve that net as much as possible. They're kind of in that little in-between area where it's not great, but it's not damaging either. If you can move that up, you'd feel even more comfortable heading in there when you talk about at-large consideration there. And as we've seen, margin for error or margin for victory plays into the net rankings. And so from that standpoint, that would help a lot. At this point on the road, you just got to go get a win. You don't necessarily, you feel better about them blowing out bad teams on the road, but let's take baby steps. Start getting the wins there, just whatever it may take, and then really try to win convincingly at home. Because again, the tournament selection is based on season as a whole. You look at the resume, but you do like to leave a good last impression, certainly. Put something into their minds when they're thinking about, okay, how good is this team? What have they accomplished? adding a few kind of exclamation point wins at the end of the season will only help. Will help their metrics and help their perception. As for the second part, I think you have to go with UConn at this point.
I agree.
Because we saw Purdue kind of trip up a couple of times now. It wasn't just Nebraska. So right now, I mean, Purdue and UConn kind of look like the clear best teams in the country, and I think UConn's been able to be more consistent than Purdue. They were able to keep winning with the injuries that they sustained to Donovan Clingan and Stephon Castle has been out, so they haven't. It's not like they've been healthy all season. They've missed some key pieces and just continue to roll. They've got kind of the most probably complete team in the country in terms of pieces, impact pieces at every spot on the floor. So I'll go with UConn as the. I mean, kind of been joking recently. It kind of seems like UConn might be the only good team in the country because everybody who gets up to that 2-3 spot, they're taking a loss. Nobody can seem to sustain success outside of UConn at this point.
Jacob, I want to ask you about Creighton and Butler this weekend. Important, but what's the vibe right now with some of the smoke around Coach Mack and the Ohio State opening? What do you believe?
I mean, so anytime there's administration changes, I think there's reason to wonder, okay, what's it look like, especially when the coach was so close with the previous administration and changes at president, changes at AD over the last few years. And so it's just, I think the athletic department is a different place than it was previously. That being said, he just did sign the extension a couple of years ago, whenever that was. And since then, they've continued to elevate the recruiting. They made a deep tournament run last year, deepest the team's ever gone. So I think we're seeing a coach's agent do his job like he has every offseason. Ultimately, I think it's on Creighton and the administration to make sure that McDermott understands that he's valued here and they take care of him. But in the meantime, I mean, he's going to keep doing his job here. And if your coach isn't in some of these, then it's probably not a great thing because it means that he's wanted, that he's doing a really good job, and people nationally are taking notice. So, I think I don't think it's a complete nothing, but I think I don't think we'll know how much is until later down the road. Sure. I think right now it's all basketball, and they'll cycle back. That'll be between Creighton and McDermott's agent and kind of figuring out, all right, what does this look like moving forward? But yeah, he's doing a really good job, and I mean, any program in the country would be lucky to have him.
Jacob, before we get you out of here, about 60 seconds. If you are Ohio State, or I guess Michigan, they're probably going to be looking for another head coach this offseason too. Focusing on the Big Ten schools, where do you go?
I have no idea. I mean, there's an extensive list of candidates that I've seen thrown out there. I don't know that I have a favorite. It's kind of weird. I don't know what happened there with that program. Holtman was a really good coach, got off to a great start there, and then the last couple of years just stumbled. I know it's hard being the kind of the basketball coach at a football program, especially now we're kind of navigating the NIL world where there's only a finite number of amount of money, and a lot of it at a program like that is going to football. So what does that look like for basketball? So it's a Big Ten job. It's a great job. They're going to be able to hire a good coach, probably a sitting head coach from somewhere. But it's not necessary. I think it's definitely a much better football job than it is basketball, and there are some challenges with it. So I'll be curious to see kind of where they go and who does show interest in the job.
Jacob Padilla with Hail Varsity, Hurrdat Sports at Jacob Padilla _ Jacob, thanks for squeezing us in today. Appreciate you.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
There he is. Good to hear from Jacob. Open phones till 5 on the way.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, Friday edition, Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. More comments in the stream, no pun intended, with the topic Trothgate, I guess is what we'll get into. As Tuck asked about the troth Justin has pro advice to you, Elijah, next time you're headed to the trough.
I never heard
Look
this
how
one
specific
before.
that was.
Stand back so you hit the back of
You
the
were worried
trough
about splattering.
just after the top of your arc. I'd never heard that one before. Usually I'm going for like firepower. I want to be in there as quick as possible so I can get back to
Joba
the
Chamberlain
game.
has left the chat as Husker great, World Series champ, Yankee, and great pro career. Joba, we will stick with baseball here.
Hey, they have them at Wrigley Field, so I mean,
I haven't been to
your tie.
Wrigley in 100 years.
Let's talk about velocity. We could be talking about the troughs or Husker baseball and the pitching
Yeah, you
today.
need to throw strikes when you step up, right? Joba, how are you, man? Good to spend time.
I'm good, other than the fact that it got cold again here. Like, this doesn't, I mean, it's bipolar here. You know that.
No, it's all good. Joba, you're bundled up, but you still look, bundled up enough to go play catch. What'd you think? 4-1 opening win against Baylor. Rob and the crew on the Hill, man, they got it done.
Yeah, I think Sears came out and set the tempo. I just, like we talked about on our podcast, is just the tempo and everything. 7 punch outs, 0 walks. Went out and did his thing, created what he needed to create in the aspect of what it was. And then obviously, Tucker comes in and obviously gives up the double, but, get his feet under him and get him throwing the ball. I kind of love KP in that role.
Mm-hmm.
Do you keep him there, or, do you try and do, something else to get him back in the starting? Because, I mean, he's done it all. He's kind of been everywhere in between. So, but no, I mean, top to bottom and what we've talked about, I think they dotted the I's and crossed the T's in game one. And I think it was a fun game to watch. It was a great tempo, great defense, did the small things really, really well, had 0 walks. And I think that's huge. And then that plays over and it turns into what it is. And I think that's just the recipe for the win and getting big hits. And do I think he misread the ball in left field a little bit? He probably thought it was hit a little bit harder than it was on who was it? Oh yeah, it was Dylan.
Carey.
Yeah.
RBI.
And so, yeah, no, I think it's a great game one. I really can't. There's nothing to really complain about.
Yeah, you laid out the things you're going to be watching for this weekend, Job, on the newest episode of the Triple Play podcast. Go check that out if you haven't checked it out just yet. And the things that you kind of laid out from a pitching perspective, Job, were first pitch strikes, that strikeout to walk ratio, and getting early contact. And I think the Husker pitchers kind of checked all 3 of those boxes, and the last one was just go out there and compete. And I think you had 4 pitchers step to the mound today who really gave it their all, who really competed in game 1 of the year. Sears looked fantastic. I love Timmerman, the freshman, being able to generate some contact. And as you said, it led to a double once, but I did a great job working that ground ball and getting the double play. Kyle Perry was great in that setup role. I think the Husker coaches got what they wanted from their first 4 pitchers to see the mound this season today. Yeah,
I mean, there's not much more you can ask for. And I mean, I feel like I'm saying exactly what Rob would probably say, but it's one of those things where, when that gets instilled and beat into you, it's something that sticks with you. And it obviously has translated into what the pitching staff is now. And we saw it firsthand today. And hopefully it continues to carry over and do that. I mean, obviously the confidence in bringing in Tucker first out of the pen in that type of game showed you the confidence they have in his arm and what he can do. Pretty sure that's probably going to happen with Ryan Herbel when the next game comes, and he's going to be that guy. But it's just you have the opportunity to have that quality of arms to be able to do that. And I think that is such an added value in everything that we're going to do to be successful this season, because as we've talked about, is the bullpen's going to be a huge part. Yes, Sears did his, but then at the same time, it's like, well, once the ball's handed off, are we going to be able to handle the rest of the game?
Joba Chamberlain's with us on Hail Varsity Radio. And as a pitcher, when the staff is cruising and not giving up free bases, striking batters out, and then for the first little bit over half the game, the offense really hasn't been able to get anything going. As a staff and as a pitcher, how do you keep those guys in it, believing that they're going to get it done? Because obviously something flipped there in the last 3 or so innings.
Well, I think the thing as a whole is like the hitters will understand it's like they're keeping us in the game. We got to do something. Like we've gotten one. Okay, like they're keeping us in the game. You know, how can we on the other side do the same thing? Like we're in the game. It was 0-0, then it was 1-0, then it was 1-1. How do we go about that aspect of it? And I think it's contagious, right? It's contagious in the fact you see what the pitching staff's doing. You see what the guy in front of you has done. And I think it's all relative and contagious to where it's like, damn, I don't want to let them down. You know, let's figure out a way to scratch a run across. Let's figure out a way to make sure we keep this a game. And I think that's what they did, and they saw it, and then, you know, it came out to a 4-1 win. But I think when you look at it as a whole, Connor, and it's how everybody puts themselves together and how they understand both sides of the fence, where it's like they're keeping us in the game, we got to do our part too.
Joba, got about 2 minutes before we have a hard break. We'll carry you over in the next segment if you've got a couple of minutes. But speak real quick about what type of energy 2-out hits can bring into the dugout.
Oh, huge. I mean, it's something where, like I said, it's contagious. Like somebody coming up big with that hit, somebody stepping up, you know, getting a big out, doing that, and then next thing you know, you get a huge 2-out hit, an RBI, and then boom, here you go. You know, and then you got somebody coming off the bench hitting a homer. Like, I mean, that's just it's a recipe for success, and it makes everybody better.
Pretty demoralizing too. You give up a 2-out. you're up. You know, 2 out. I should say 2 strike, 2 out, and they still get one off you. Joba, hang tight for us. Chill in the green room, and we'll have some more thoughts from Joba Chamberlain, Husker great and Major League Baseball veteran, 2-time World Series champ, and part of the Triple Play podcast with Hurrdat Sports. Can check that out. Elijah's on that. I'm on that with Joba, and can find that on Spotify and iTunes. You want to check out Joba's Nebraska 2024 preview. Do it. We'll have more Joba thoughts coming up as Nebraska and T-Tech get rolling tomorrow at 3. We wind down hour 1 at Hail Varsity, and we're powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Winding down this first hour, it's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Cotter Clark. Joba Chamberlain recapping Nebraska's 4-1 win over Baylor in Arlington. Nebraska, Texas Tech tomorrow. And Joba, I want to get your take here on Will Walsh. The lefty takes the hill tomorrow. And another RPI builder. I know Baylor's been in transition a bit. Texas Tech comes in ranked 21st. And what do you like about Walsh?
I think he builds off what Sears did today. And I think, you know, seeing what it was, and obviously Baylor coming off, I think, what was it, a 20-win season, and they're trying to get back to where they want to be. But I think it's building off what he established, and that's throwing strikes, early contact, and, you know, keeping us in the game and being able to, you know, go deep. And I think Sears threw 72 pitches today. Mm-hmm. I think being around that mark, but getting into the 6th inning and getting us depth and getting deep into the game, I think that's huge. And I think what he saw, they're going to build off that, because you saw a guy go out and do what he did in game 1. You want to go do the same thing or be better in game 2. And I think getting us deep into the game and getting us into the bullpen and seeing what we've got there is going to be huge in building everything that we want to build from the ground up. And then that's game 1. And, it started great. And I think, he's going to go out and establish a strike zone. His secondary stuff, I think is really, really, really good. And I think it's going to be a good matchup, and especially with a top 25 team where you got to lay them on the line a little bit.
Job, you think it's more important whenever you play a top 25 team, and it kind of varies on every team, but not knowing much about these teams to start off the season, just kind of getting some preseason feelers. It's going to be offense or defense that's more important tomorrow, because Huskers got a healthy mix of both today. The offense really came along in the later innings. What do you think is going to be more important if you want to go take down a squad like Texas Tech, especially early in the season? They've been practicing outside, and they're a pretty good team.
It's obviously all facets of it. We've got, the ball bounced our couple ways. Dylan dives at third, and it goes straight to the shortstop, and we get the out, right? So, the ball was bouncing the right way. But I think it's going to be all components of what we need. Obviously playing a team of that stature and what they're coming in as, you're going to need to do from start to finish. It's going to be throwing strikes. It's going to be playing defense. It's going to be doing the small things really, really well. And, if you keep the same recipe as we did today, it's going to work. And it will be something that you can build off of. And it's something where you can still get better. And I think they know that, and I think this is it was a great indication of what the value of this team is.
It's Joba Chamberlain, Husker standout, and, of course, two-time World Series champ. Joba, we'll sit down for another pod next week. Thanks for giving us some time today, bud.
All right, you're welcome. Dad, I love you. He's watching and listening.
I love it. Appreciate you, Joba. Thanks.
He's the pride of Fairbury, an average Joe. Bill Doleman, the professor.
I had a 6 ACT in 1967. One time I got an A and my grandma beat me for cheating.
Now with Hail Varsity Radio.
It's that time. It's hour 2. We kick it off with the pride of Fairbury, NBC Sports, the professor. It is Bill Doleman, at Bill Doleman on Twitter. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. Billy D, how's the week? Thanks for hanging out.
Just enjoying this wonderful spring-like Nebraska day. Good grief.
55
Woke up this
one
morning,
day
there's snow on the ground. What happened to that groundhog thing? That was pretty promising, wasn't it?
Oh, Puxtony Phil's washed, dude.
Yeah, Phil has a contract out on his life.
Whenever your average for picking the winter is the same as an MLB hitter, you got problems. If you're sub 500, you got two options, man. Like, you should at least be 50-50. But that's what I say at the sports book, too, and I'm not.
Hey, I don't see you predicting the spring or the winter.
I could have told you.
You think you could do it any better than he can?
It's easily predictable. It's going to suck.
I can tell you this is how February always goes. You have like a week-long stretch where you're like, oh, man, we're through the worst of it. And then it cools down a little bit, and you're like, oh, okay, we should have known better. It is still wintertime, and it's going to warm back up, and that's when the one that really gets you.
And you're the fool who keeps believing that.
Because the next time it's going to warm up, probably like next weekend, we're going to say, look at this. Now it's actually spring, and then you're going to get the coldest week of the year. That's going to kill you, and then you can enjoy like your 1 week of spring before 90-degree weather hits.
We're gonna have like a blizzard for one of the state basketball tournaments, and when all the one ways become two ways and then icy, right? That's what's going to happen in Lincoln, right?
I love that when the one ways become two ways.
Fairbury slander comes out. Bill, let's talk some football, and you have the S&P predictive metrics that have come out. We've spent a little time on that this week. Nebraska 7-5 per FanDuel. That's the over/under. And if you're If you're going to lean right now, just kind of blind Pepsi challenge, are you leaning closer to 6-6 or 9-3?
Well, I got them 13-0,
okay.
So that might upset the analytics scale. Okay,
Wow.
Look objectively, I'm leaning more 9-3 because people have looked at Nebraska's second half of the schedule saying, well, once they get through that first half, which is pretty user-friendly, right? I mean, you kick off with UTEP at home, a new coach. I don't think Nebraska is going to be as blinded by the light, if you will, when they take on Deion Sanders. I'm not going to say Coach Prime. Deion Sanders is a buff. I think this is going to be a completely different atmosphere, especially because it's at home, right? And then the rest of the schedule for the first half is pretty user-friendly. And they say, well, they've got USC, and then they've got UCLA. And I'm like, whoa. UCLA. I was dismissing UCLA, beg your pardon, a few months ago. Now, maybe they will turn things around under Deshaun, not Watson Foster, right? But that's a program that has been completely in an upheaval for months now. They did not have a great recruiting class. Their coach is gone right before spring ball. You've got a first-year head coach. That's going to be a tremendous learning curve for UCLA, and I would be shocked if they can turn that around coming to Lincoln against the Nebraska team that should have some momentum at that time. Now, the rest of the schedule, sure, you've got some games that should be perhaps toss-ups, and Nebraska won't be favored, and I get all that. But the first half was pretty user-friendly, and Nebraska's got some momentum and good fortune, which, let's face it, they haven't had for 20 years. Mm-hmm. But if they get some good fortune and don't lose games 13-10 on the last-second kick, I mean, what are the chances of that?
For 4 straight years.
Right. Maybe fortune smiles a little bit differently on the Huskers, and maybe some of those 13-10 close losses become 13-10 close wins. I think maybe Matt Rule alluded to that a little bit. You lose close, then you start to win close, and then you start to win big. I kind of believe that at some point the fortunes have to turn around, and those close games are going to go Nebraska's way. And so some of those toss-ups, why wouldn't it be at least 9-3? Well, although look, I'm looking 13-0. And by the way, USC isn't exactly coming off a stellar season, and they're going to have a new quarterback, and the quarterback who was the heir apparent is playing in Boise.
Reshuffled deck.
Yeah, Bill, whenever you talk about the schedule, though, it's a completely different team, so I don't want this to be misconstrued, but the schedule has shades of 2016 Nebraska, where Nebraska opened up that 2016 season with 7 straight wins. You get up into the top 25. Your only real test during that time was the home game against number 22 Oregon. Like, that's kind of the feel I get with this schedule. Obviously, the back half of the year kind of hurt that team as they
played
finished
well against Whiskey, but Ohio State they dropped.
They finished down the stretch 2-4. Like if you include the bowl game to finish at 9-4 on the year. But from a scheduling point of view, how favorably that schedule set up for a team that wasn't Nebraska's best kind of strikes me as this same 2024 schedule of, I don't think this is Nebraska's best football team they've put on the field, not by a long stretch, but I think the schedule sets up for them where if you get momentum going in the right way, momentum's hard to quantify in sports.
Right, but also consider the era around Nebraska football right now, the culture around Nebraska football. It's different now than it was in 2016. Things had not gone entirely south, for who was it, Riley?
Yeah.
Back then, I mean, which bad chapter of football was that, or coaching was that? I think everybody right now, sure, we're drinking the Rule-Aid, right? But I think when you consider the culture of Nebraska football, I think people objectively, again, think that it's different. Mm-hmm. And when you have Ty Robinson coming back, because he knows he can be better, and you've got what Nebraska has along I think both lines of scrimmage are going to be better. And you've got a defense that is very well respected now. So I just think that, the schedule is similar, but I think the culture of the team is different than it was, 7-8 years ago. Mm-hmm. And there's reason to believe that culture is going to help win some games this year.
Bill, I know you're not going to like this.
And a Big Ten championship and go to the college football playoff. But go ahead, Connor.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here because I know that you have Dylan Raiola coming in. I know he's a 5-star. He's still a freshman. Does that knock you off the 9-win pedestal at least a little bit?
Look, it's not easy for a freshman to win, especially in a conference like the Big Ten is going to be. But I can think of the few freshmen who've done okay for themselves. I was down in Houston at the time when Johnny Manziel came on the scene, did okay for himself as a freshman and as a sophomore, right? I think Caleb Williams was pretty good as a freshman at Oklahoma. I think, Spencer Rattler didn't have a good freshman season at Oklahoma. It's not impossible. It's not impossible for a freshman to come in and not have to be the star. I don't think Dylan Raiola has to be the star of the Nebraska football team. I think he just has to have a solid freshman season, try to limit mistakes, have a coaching staff that coaches within his capability and doesn't put it all on him and say, you're the guy who has to carry this football team. And Dylan needs to understand that he doesn't need to carry this football team. How about collectively the team not fumble, right? Dylan Raiola is not going to be playing on that 3-3-5 defense that we all think is going to be really good. It was good last year. So Dylan Raiola doesn't have to be the one who Nebraska relies on. He needs to be serviceable. He needs to be solid. He needs to be good. He needs to protect the football, make good decisions. But to put it all on him for Nebraska to be, 9-0, 9-3, I don't think that's the case.
So who does need to be the star in your mind?
I think collectively the defense, for one, not just one person. No, not one person is going to win you, championships unless perhaps their last name is Brady or Mahomes. Although I saw that Kansas City picked up a backup quarterback from Pittsburgh, so they've got some insurance in case Mahomes can't carry the team next year. But I don't see it as a one person team that's going to make the whole difference. And that hasn't been the case on the great Nebraska football teams of the past. You had a pipeline offensive line. You had a great defense. You had Tommy Frazier had help. If you look behind him, he had Lawrence, and he had the offensive line. And it's a team game, but I think that defense is going to win Nebraska some football games.
Bill, you've nailed it with some of those freshman examples. They didn't have to be the guy. They had to be better than what has been going on the past few years with quarterback play. So do you like that offensive side of the ball with a veteran offensive line picking up the slack? Do you like the running back room? Do you like the receiving core to help complement and aid potentially a true freshman starter? Is it nice? You were there in '92. We had Will Shields on the offensive line. You had a good black shirt defense. You had, I think, Calvin and Lawrence. So you had options. You had talent to kind of distribute that weight, that load too. Do you see enough, at least on paper right now, that Nebraska can have some of those heavy lifters?
I should also mention, Tommy Frazier was a freshman who did come in and did pretty well when it came time for him to start. What was it, the 6th game of the season, with a very good supporting cast around him. Tommy didn't have to be Tommy Frazier Jr., Senior his freshman year for that team to be really good. I think we would all agree, in addition to that defense collectively as a unit being good, I think Nebraska's offensive line has more depth now than in many years. I think that they can probably go solidly too deep for the first time in a while and not try to figure out, well, if the center gets hurt, then we got to bring over a left guard, then we got to bring in a left tackle to play right guard, because the right guard, I don't think they have that right now. I like the running back room. If Irvin and Johnson, one or both, can come back and be productive and be healthy, I'd have a hard time with Gabe Irvin. I think a hip injury is really something to come back from. Ask Bo Jackson. But maybe he's more of a fullback type player. I think Quentin Ives has a chance, and the transfer from Oregon, name's escaping me. Dowdell is a pretty solid back. And I mentioned it last week, I think, or maybe it was on the Average Joe podcast, that if you like San Francisco's offense, not the second half of the Super Bowl, the star of the show there is the running back, and they've got the best in the game in Christian McCaffrey. So if Nebraska has a good stable of backs and one that can, give you 15 really good carries a game behind a deep offensive line, I like Nebraska's tight ends a lot, and I think that they'll be utilized. Receivers have some really flashy resumes, don't they? and measurables, as they call them, in the scouting combine, really good measurables. But those guys need to really grow up pretty quickly. I think that's maybe the biggest, freshman quarterback. But those receivers, are they going to be big play guys? That, I think, is a huge question collectively.
Banks and Nayor should help supplement that.
Yes.
These guys that have played ball.
And Bill, I want to get your thoughts here on a position group that often goes unnoticed, not by me, but it's the offensive line. Did you see enough from them last year with their development to I don't want to say assume next year will be better, but did you see enough from what Coach Raiola instilled within them to think that they're not going to be a problem issue on this team moving forward?
The one thing about Donnie Raiola is I know his players love him. And is it the same kind of love that they had back in the day with the pipeline with Milton Dan? I think that's probably a work in progress. But I know his players like playing for him, which is significant. I think you only need to look at Benhart. 2 years ago, he was a punchline, right? And last year, you could say he was the best of the offensive line, which was not bad. It wasn't the offensive line that cost Nebraska games. It was holding on to the football, right? So I think if you look at Benhart's development, I think you have depth there that's going to push guys to be better so that they just can't rely on, well, we don't have numbers behind us, so we're the guys who are going to start. I think that they can be interchangeable probably through those top 10 players. And I think that's going to make a big difference with this team. So I like the makeup of the line, partly because I like the culture. I say culture a lot, but I know those guys like their coach. And I think he's proven to be a really good hire or retainee by Matt Rule, regardless of who the quarterback is and what his last name is.
Bill, about 90 seconds, the Ohio State opening. I'd love your short list for that opening. Mack has been mentioned, of course, or there's smoke around him from Creighton. Who else kind of tickles your fancy for that Ohio State job?
Well, I thought Buzz Williams maybe because he's at Texas A&M and he's at a football school, but I was talking to somebody else about it, and I didn't realize that Williams has Texas roots, so maybe he's at home there. And Ross Bjork, who was the AED at Texas A&M, went to Ohio State, so I thought maybe that might be a natural. But Mick Cronin at UCLA, I think, look, football's not the only one that's got some issues at UCLA. And I could see Mick Cronin has roots in Ohio, coached at Xavier, Louisville. I think that one, he had UCLA at a really high level with that one class that's been gone. Now they're in the middle of the Pac-2. I think if you're at Notre Dame, beg your pardon, Creighton, you are saying a few Hail Marys that it's Mick Cronin and not McDermott, because I think McDermott would be a great fit there too.
Mick Cronin is, I was watching just a little bit of the UCLA Buffs game last night, and it's empty seat night at Pauley Pavilion, and that's a money game on a Thursday.
And it's not as though they pack him in Columbus either. That's a thing to do, not the thing to do in Columbus. Okay, they're passionate about their football this time. You're waiting for spring ball, but Nebraskans are passionate about basketball too. Ohio State, I don't think that's the case. So that's a tough sell for somebody to take that job. But if you're Mick Cronin and you're in Pauley Pavilion, the house that Wooden built, and they're not coming, maybe it's time to go.
It's a weird combination at Ohio State of high expectations with and moderate fan support.
And not,
which is also
not
why
being
maybe
the show.
Maybe McDermott doesn't go because, look, they're packing him in at CHI, and he's, really the reason why. Mm-hmm. But this was supposed to be Creighton's year, and I don't think it's going to be. And how tough is it going to be rebuild that? And maybe it's time for him to have a new challenge.
Billy D will check in with you this weekend, bud. Thanks for jumping on.
All right, boys. Go Big Red. See you.
There he is. Bill Doleman with us. Connor Onions, BTN, play-by-play man, up next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. We welcome in Connor Onion, play-by-play man with the Big Ten Network, with ESPN, with Fox. Connor, thanks for giving us a few minutes today. How are you?
Guys, thanks for having me. Enjoyed the show today. A little football talk, a little Joba, a little bathroom etiquette at the beginning. That was well done.
We were hoping you didn't hear that.
Yeah, because we weren't sure if you were going to answer, but you did, and that's important.
No, I've actually been calling ever since that topic, and Connor just picked up. So I'm glad I finally broke through.
So yes on the troughs?
As a Chicagoan that's used to the Wrigley Field bathroom setup, I am pro-trough. I'm pro-trough.
Love it. Love it.
Well, I think some of the troughs at South Stadium in Lincoln are maybe – they're not obviously quite as old as Wrigley, but they may be up there. I mean, the stadium turns 100 this year, and they may be the originals. So –
I didn't realize that was such a unique part of history when I was here for volleyball day.
No, well, yeah, right. the other not mentioned part of history versus the important part of history.
Imagine that, a mini segment on BTN on the troughs at Memorial Stadium.
No, hate the idea.
The history those troughs have seen.
Connor, let's talk Nebraska here. You've had a chance to see Fred Hoiberg's crew a few times this year, and just kind of get your impression here. They're on the bubble. They're in some spots on the right side of it, other places on the wrong side. What's your takeaway with Nebraska so far?
Yeah, I think they're on the right side of the bubble, at least in our trusted source at BTN, Mike DeCourcy. He has them on the right side of the bubble, and I'm going to trust what Mike says. This is not new information for your fan base, but it's obviously a very different team at home. And visiting with Mike Rhodes and the Penn State staff today, we were trying to get something out of him to just describe what it's like on tape before they actually walk in there tomorrow to PBA. And it's like a lot of the answers that coaches have given us throughout the league, and that's really indescribable, but the energy is different. The energy when I covered the Huskers at Northwestern versus watching them on tape against Michigan looks like two totally different teams. So Coach Hoiberg brought it up. The last time they had a 7-day break or a 6-day break was going into the Creighton game. I expect them to be a lot sharper than that. I know that kind of got out of hand toward halftime when they saw the Jays back in December. But I think this is an NCAA tournament team, and I expect them to finish the regular season looking like that. And hopefully, tomorrow's not the day that we get the answer to this, but hopefully at some point they can figure out a way to get a road win and kind of solidify their spot in the tournament.
It's Connor Onion with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Connor, whenever I look at this game tomorrow, the two big red flags I have are, as you kind of mentioned, the 7-day layoff as well as an 11 a.m. tip-off. And I want to get your thoughts specifically on Penn State, because we know what Nebraska's been at home. Those two things are a little bit worrisome, but you still think you're going to get a good effort from Nebraska. But where I get worried is if Penn State is able to throw the first punch, if you will, in the game tomorrow, in a game where, Nebraska has been sitting at home for a while. And you know what? The fans, you're never as juiced up for an 11 a.m. game as you are for a 7 or an 8 o'clock game. What's your take on Penn State's ability to potentially throw the first punch tomorrow?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think Penn State will jolt you just how they play. And they are going to come out and get in your space, and they're going to press you a little bit. And I think it'll be really interesting how Nebraska handles their lineup and their rotation, because they've been playing, as you guys know, they've been playing this bigger lineup a lot more lately with Bryce Williams handling the ball a little bit more at 6'7", and Jamarcus Lawrence coming off the bench. I would expect to see a lot of Jamarcus Lawrence. I mean, we've seen him a lot off the bench even since they made the change, but I think they're going to need his ball handling on the floor a lot, because Penn State is a team that turns you over as much as anybody in the Big Ten and almost as much as anybody in the country. So they are going to come out and punch you with their pressure, and it's not a style that really anybody in the Big Ten plays. So I think that factored in with the early start, the layoff. Nebraska's going to have to be ready to play right away, which I expect them to be. I think the rest versus rest conversation, I expect it to be more heavy on the rest being a benefit rather than there being some rust after playing well for most of that game against Michigan.
Connor, Nebraska's only a game up technically on Penn State in the Big Ten standings. And when you look at it, everywhere between where Nebraska's located all the way down to 12. It's just kind of a big mess. What do you make of that, and how important it is not only this game for Nebraska, but really down the stretch, because they play a lot of those teams that's located in that jumble right in the middle?
Yeah, well, there's also the fact that they're only a game back from getting a double bye in the Big Ten tournament. I mean, that's how close it is in the middle, and that's how it was last year. I'm sure you guys remember the final day of the year in the Big Ten. Northwestern played Rutgers, and Northwestern, if they won that game, they could have been second, which they ended up being. But if they lost that game, they would have been ninth. And I think we're headed to that game that Nebraska is going to play at Michigan on March 10th. I think we're going to see something pretty similar in the standings, where all the tiebreakers are going to be at play. Nebraska could have a chance to maybe be a bye, or they could potentially be in a position where, they're playing in the first day of the conference tournament. That's how tight it is right now, and that's why this game is so important, because if they find themselves with the same record as Penn State, only playing this one game head-to-head, that might be the difference between playing on Wednesday, Thursday, or potentially getting a bye all the way to Friday when it comes time to go to Minneapolis for the tournament.
Connor Onion with us, Hail Varsity Radio. You'll watch him tomorrow on BTN with Nick Baugh. Could also catch him on ESPN and Fox. So we know Nebraska's charge is to take care of home court and go get a couple on the road. That being said, who do you kind of put in the mix with Nebraska as far as – tell me about Minnesota. Tell me about Rutgers. Who's a hot/scary team to you right now? Who's someone to watch out for? Is Penn State in that category?
Yeah, they are. Resume and metrics-wise, Penn State is decently far off the bubble. That's not to say that they can't play their way in. They're going to have a great opportunity with this game, chance to get a quad one win. Wednesday they play Illinois, and they are, of course, going to have good opportunities in the Big Ten tournament to maybe work their way into that conversation. But, going back to the bracketology that we talked about in the beginning, Mike DeCourcy moved Rutgers after they beat Northwestern last night into that group of next four teams out of the NCAA tournament. And since Rutgers got Jeremiah Williams back, he was involved at Iowa State with the gambling situation there, and they were waiting for him to be eligible. And since he came back against Michigan 2 weeks ago, they've won all four of their games, and they've played their way right on the bubble. So that's a bit of a scary team. They're always going to defend with Steve Peichel. Still one of the best teams in the Big Ten defensively, still one of the best teams in the country defensively. Can they get enough offense to beat Purdue, who they have coming up in the schedule? And if they do, then I think they are a legitimate bubble candidate. But it's got to happen in a hurry for Rutgers. Minnesota, kind of in the same category as Penn State, where they're having a very good season. I was really impressed watching them last night at Purdue. Shot the heck out of the ball, especially in that first half. But metric-wise and what they did in the non-conference, they're not quite in that same area as Rutgers is. So they're more near Penn State than they are Rutgers as far as playing their way onto the bubble at Minnesota.
Connor, a couple of minutes here. More of a broad NCAA tournament question. We briefly talked about this in the first hour, but I think UConn is the number one overall seed as of right now. I know DeCourcy is Purdue in that conversation, as they should be. To you, who's that number one team in the country right now that should be at the top of the bracket?
Oh, man. I agree with a lot of the talk of it's UConn, it's Purdue, and then it's the category of everybody else. I would love to see that matchup, whether it's in the Final Four or in the national championship game. The way the tournament has gone the last several years, I don't know if we'll get it, because it just seems like the crash course of the best teams of the country in the regular season, what we think, don't end up in that spot. But I really think it's 1A and 1B. You know, I've been fortunate enough to cover both teams this year. I actually covered UConn when their star big man Donovan Klingen was out, and they've just gotten better since they got their 7-footer back. But seeing him against Zach Edey, I don't think there would be much ground given. I think it's similar to, you know, what we saw in the Nebraska win against Purdue here. It comes down to the guards for Purdue. And UConn has huge guards. They're 6'5" and 6'6" in the backcourt. And, you know, Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer and Lance Jones have been really, really good. They're giving up a little bit of size there. So I think that would be the biggest intrigue for me in that matchup. But right now I have them as, I know you can't do that in the poll, but I have them as 1A and 1B as far as who's the best team in the country.
Connor, we quickly need to get your thoughts on Ohio State, but before we get there, does Purdue have the pieces to make a national championship run this year in your mind?
Absolutely. And they're a much better shooting team than last year. They handle pressure a lot better than last year. And, you know, Zach Edey is going to be the national player of the year again. So I think the hunger that comes from that pain of last year will also fuel them a little bit. And I have very little doubt that they'll be at least playing on the second weekend of the NCAA tournament.
All right, Connor, if you're in the athletic offices at Ohio State this week, who are you targeting to be the next Ohio State head coach?
Yeah, I think you guys talked about it on your last segment. There's a hot name in the state of Nebraska here. Greg McDermott's name at Creighton is being thrown around quite a bit, and you know, we were talking about that today. Nick and I were. Nick Bott, who I'm calling the game with, who's a Creighton alum, and just kind of weighing the pros and cons of it. You know, I don't know how much interest there is from Coach McDermott. I'm sure there's going to be interest from Ohio State, but I think the offer's got to be pretty good because, you know, you're a controversial foul away and 1 point away from taking Creighton to the Final Four, so you know it can be done. Where Greg McDermott is now. You know, I think Sean Miller is going to be very, very interested. He's in state there in Ohio at Xavier. Dusty May is interesting. He's the coach at Florida Atlantic, and he's from Illinois. He went to Indiana and was a student manager for Bob Knight at IU. So he knows the Big Ten. He knows the Midwest. He's gone deep into the NCAA tournament. Those would probably be my first three calls if I were Ohio State. And I know I'm probably leaving a couple names off that list, but that's kind of where my mind goes right away after hearing that news the other day about the change in head coach.
Connor, great to spend time with you today. Thanks for giving us a few minutes. Connor Onion with us here on Hail Varsity. Have a great call tomorrow, okay?
Guys, enjoyed the show. Thanks for having me on.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. Friday edition. It's Hail Varsity. Don't forget the weekend edition tomorrow morning on the Hail Varsity YouTube channel, 7:45 a.m. We'll get rolling. Myself, Elijah Herbel, and Mark Cranack. We'll check in with Sharpie. We'll check in with Brandon Vogel.
And we'll see the racing shirt has been delivered.
Oh, so you have the racing shirt.
Just kind of Mark has it.
Reset that because you guys did the merch exchange last Saturday.
And this comes from our friend Eric Freer.
Yes.
Who's on a NASCAR race team. And
you going to wear it for the Daytona this weekend?
Well, Mark has it.
Yeah.
So
I'd make sure if you get it back from Cranack, make sure he washed it.
Well, I washed it before I gave it to Cranack.
I know you did. I'm saying if you get it back for little Daytona fanboy,
that'd be sick. Well, we'll see. But basically, the story behind it is Eric works for, I believe, Ricky Stenhouse. Stenhouse won the Daytona 500 last year, and they've since changed sponsors. So he had a shirt. It's got Kleenex across the front, a whole bunch of fun sponsors on it. And Mark was talking on a Saturday morning show about the potential to get a shirt like this that we could wear on the Saturday morning show to pimp our sponsors. And Eric just sends me a DM and says, hey, you want this shirt? I'll send it over your guys' way. He sends us this shirt. It's beautiful. Mark came and picked it up from my house last Saturday, so he has it in his possession. We are on Mark Cranack NASCAR shirt watch to see if he pulls it out of the closet tomorrow morning and see if he has it on. It should fit. We did a little. We didn't try it on out in front of my house last Saturday, but we did give it the old hold it up in front of him and see how well it looks. And it looked like it would fit him well. So time will tell, but I think we'll probably see Mark in that shirt tomorrow morning.
Clausburn is give him one more phone call, because I know the reason he's not picking up is because he may be in a detention center. He said he was headed south, and when Claus says he's heading south, that might mean a balloon run.
Yeah, it's usually a coal shipment.
Yeah?
Yeah. We'll call it coal.
Wow. Look at you.
Thank you.
You've watched a lot of Narcos, haven't you? Well, we'll get to the Friday forecast, the basketball edition.
Some call it coal, some call it black tar.
Uh-huh. I think it was called coal at Guns N' Roses get-togethers. Okay, so we'll get to the forecast in just a moment. A reminder to get the show on all platforms, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play with Hail Varsity Radio. That's where you can get the pod, the video portion of the show, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Subscribe to that. Give us a like. Tell us what you think. And on Twitter, at HVarsity Radio. Let's, without further ado...
I've struck out swinging, by the way.
You're okay. You foul-tipped a few, and it's up to Claus to dial us back. No worries. Let's dive into this.
We'll do it live.
We'll do it. Yeah. We'll save Nebraska-Penn State for last. In Claus's defense, he is driving. He did warn us it's in a spotty area. Think of No Country for Old Men. Spotty.
Gotta get Wi-Fi on that sleigh.
Possibly. Okay, so Wisconsin, Iowa, I'm going to just say...
1.5 Wisconsin.
Okay, I had it 3.5. 1.5 makes sense. You know, Wisconsin is broken, and I think Nebraska broke them. Give me Iowa. Give me Iowa by about 10. 78, and I know Iowa averages 90, or I should say 88 at home. So I think Wisconsin's defense dents Iowa a little bit, but give me Iowa at home, 78-68 win outright over Wisconsin.
Yeah, as much as I hate to say it, I think I got to take Iowa as well with that high-flying offense. A.J. Storr, really, really good for Wisconsin.
He's awesome.
Love his game. As long as Chucky Hepburn isn't playing at Pinnacle Bank Arena, I'll always be rooting for him. But at the end of the day, Iowa, I just think, has way too much offense for this Wisconsin team that's going through a rough patch. Wisconsin's got to get right. They're a tourney team, but you got to get some momentum going into the tournament. I don't think that happens tomorrow. I don't think Iowa's the right recipe of a get-right game. I got Iowa winning this one 84-80.
Kind of remember when we were talking about Wisconsin's opportunity against Purdue after Nebraska, they had a chance to make that statement from 2 seed to 1 seed or solidify a 2 seed. They have free-falled all the way back to probably a 6.
Yeah, they have. I think their game against Ohio State, though, was a pretty large step back in the right direction. Now, not 2 seed direction.
It was good rehab?
Yeah, it was a good, kind of get-back game. I saw a lot of what Wisconsin used to do before that 4-game slide. So I'm going to go Wisconsin here. I think they get it done on the road. It's going to be a close game. It's probably going to have to be high-scoring if they do want to win. But give me the Badgers on the road. I'll go 79-75. Call me crazy, but I think the Badgers are starting to get back to what they do.
Illinois is at Maryland. What Maryland team do we see? Their defense is high level. Illinois, explosive. And if Mr. Underwood loses it, those guys kind of snap into form. I think Illinois squeaks out with a win here. I think there's some payback, too, on Illinois' mind because they lost at home earlier in the year to Maryland. Is that line about 3.5, 4.5, 2.5?
What time is this game at?
4:30 p.m. on Fox.
4:30 p.m. Central Standard Time?
Yes.
I got to keep on scrolling here.
It's 2.5.
1.5 for Illinois.
Jeez. All right.
Mine says 2.5. Interesting.
I am getting mine from Odds Shark.
Well, that's why. Okay.
Give me Illinois an outright, and I'll lay the 2. I'll just meet you in the middle. I'll lay the 2, 75-70 over Maryland.
Yeah, I'll take Illinois outright as well. They've been getting really hot. They had a dangerous scare against Nebraska, but they've been pretty flawless since then. I'll take Illinois to win this one, 78-69.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people kind of overreacted to Illinois' loss at Michigan State. I thought Michigan State played really well, and I think they're a pretty good team. So give me Illinois. I will go the Illini 82-71.
Sparty is at Michigan. It's a rivalry game. They hate each other. It doesn't matter. It is let's drive this program into a ditch era right now at Michigan. You go to the Elite Eight, and you inherit greatness from Beeline. And right now, you guys don't care. They're different at home than on the road, I know. Sparty, though, went out 9.5?
6.
Wow, okay. I think Michigan State wins by 9.5 or more. Give me Sparty with kind of a hard-fought, workmanlike win there, 72-61. Sparty went on the road. Rivalry games suck, I know, but Michigan State's got to have this.
I'm struggling with it for the same reason. I think Michigan State needs it more. Michigan strikes me as a team that may have rolled over, but they'll have Doug.
They have absolutely rolled over. They're looking for belly rubs.
They'll have Doug, what's his name back?
Doug McDaniel.
Doug McDaniel. I always want to say McDermott. I know it's not right.
Spelled differently, too.
Yeah. I will take D-U-G. Who spells their name D-U-G? For that reason, I'm fading Michigan. Give me Sparty. Give me Sparty 71-60.
Who spells their name that way?
I think Sparty gets it done on the road. I think they're playing some of their best basketball of the season thus far. They've won 7 of their last 9. They kind of dominated Michigan at home earlier this year. So give me the Spartans. I will go 77-64. Sparty gets it done.
We will have Nebraska predictions, Nebraska-Penn State, and we will have one more effort for Claus. If he is in a detention center, we apologize. We'll wind down to Friday. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for spending time on a Friday. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. Get the podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play is where you go. Claus is unreachable. We'll try better next time. That is next Friday. I know, and he's wearing red. Reminder to get buckled up. When you use your seatbelt, it saves lives. It prevents injuries. Only if properly worn. You got to make it click. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. And let's get back into the forecast mode. Nebraska-Penn State. And that is the assignment tomorrow, 11 a.m., PBA. Red beer, Bloody Mary, orange beer, whatever monstrosity Elijah's going to put in his coffee. It's all game. And you'll need to...
Keep the bottle of Jack away from him.
You'll need to be feeling it for sure tomorrow. Bring the energy, bring the A game if you're a Nebraska fan. I know you will. Reminder about your friends at Supernovas, supernovas.com. Go see amazing volleyball, All-Americans, world champions, national champions, CHI, their home court, of course, up in Omaha. And get a hold of your tickets today, season ticket or single game tickets when you log on, supernovas.com. The line is this, Nebraska minus 7.5 as they host Penn State. Rest versus Rust. You got Alec playing good ball, coming off a good outing. You've got Rink that's rested up. You got Jamarcus accepting his role. Does CJ get back? Does Tominaga play at a efficient level? Fellas, the turnover bug that Penn State brings with them scares me. 16.5, 17 turnovers is what they do to people. Nebraska can't handle the ball very well. I'm going Penn State upset.
Hello.
Tomorrow. The Nittany Lions, I think this is the hiccup. This is the wreck that makes you sweat out the rest of the season. We'll burn these tapes if I'm wrong. Penn State 74, Nebraska 73.
I have all the same concerns as you do, Schmitty, in this one.
That be gut-wrenching? Sorry.
I'm worried about the 11 a.m. I'm worried about the week-long layoff. I'm worried about Penn State and their defense.
I'm sure about Nebraska handling the ball.
But it feels high time. It feels like we're due for Rink Mass to have another one of his good performance. He seems to pull one out every 5-ish games. We feel due for it. I think Rink Mast carries Nebraska to victory in the second half. I think Penn State gives Nebraska all they can handle, though. Penn State covers, Nebraska wins. Give me Nebraska 73, Penn State 68.
Okay.
I think this game has the potential to be pretty scary through the first 30 or so minutes.
Yep. When your buzz wears off.
Yeah, I think it could raise some eyebrows in those first 30 minutes. I think Nebraska wakes up for this game. I'm concerned about all the reasons both of you guys are. But at the same time, it makes me feel a little bit better that Fred Hoiberg said that he essentially addressed the elephant in the room to his guys. I mean, this is crunch time. This is the most important stretch of basketball in a decade at this university. So I think Nebraska gets it done. Give me the Huskers 72 and the Nittany Lions 60.
Okay.
Give me the 12-point win at home.
Way to nail that 30-second bet in the middle of your
He knew it.
prediction, too.
He's looking at it. We will check in with you tomorrow morning, 7:45, Weekend Edition, Hail Varsity YouTube. Find us there. Connor, thanks. Elijah, thanks. We'll talk to you manana, Weekend Edition with Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.